GLOBIS.
Okay, so maybe first, would you please self-introduction first, and maybe Tom, and then, yeah.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tom Kelly. I'm a partner at a global design and innovation firm called IDEO. And here in Japan, I'm in Japan 1 week a month for the last 5 years, I think. And in addition to helping out our Tokyo design studio, I'm also chairman of our venture capital firm here in Japan. For our first venture firm anywhere in the world is here in Japan. It's called D4V, Design for Ventures.
Hi, I am Kinya Tagawa. I'm running design innovation firm here in Japan and London and New York, and as a CEO. And I am contributing to the design education in the UK, the Royal College of Art. We're running innovation design engineering department for 30 years. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Takuya Kuro, based out of Seattle, Accenture US corporations. I'm currently responsible for data science practice across 22 geographic units, which means like I'm covering like close to 40 countries across the globe. And my mission is, I do believe today, is to bridge design and technology and the science.
So, such a global talent. So I want to ask, what is an innovation trend, especially in United States or in Japan or maybe in other countries? Like, what is the the trend? And I'm so sorry, but yeah, yeah.
Okay, if I start? Sure. Happy to run with that, Chiaki-san. So when you talk about trends in innovation, most people go to a certain kind of trend, which is the tech trends themselves, the technology trends. But when I think about trends, it's the technology of the trends, but it's also the way the process of innovation, the trends in the process, and then there's trends in the underlying human needs, which is what we should all be addressing our technology towards. So within the constraints of not wanting to give too long of an answer, I'm going to just touch on each one of them, if I may. So tech trends, I don't feel so much that there's something like new to the world that has emerged in the last year, so much as we are seeing the continuation of trends and maybe some inflection points in trends. And so I think AI, artificial intelligence, is coming into its own. It is not at the edge in the Gartner hype cycle. It's off the cycle already because it's we're in the implementation phase of that. At IDEO, we really like to avoid the word artificial in artificial intelligence. And so when we say AI, we mean augmented intelligence, which is to say humans at the center and data science, machine learning, supporting human endeavors. We actually bought a data science company because we were so interested in this, and this was their approach as well as augmented intelligence. And so an example of that here in Japan, in our D4V venture firm, we've invested in 40 Japanese startups. I don't know if I made it clear before, but D4V only invests in Japan. And so one of our companies, it's called UBI. It's spelled U-B-I-E, I think. Anyhow, UBI uses AI to help doctors diagnose a patient. Patient comes in and they've got this weird cluster of symptoms, and the doctor says, never saw one exactly like this before, right? And what UBI does is it uses all of the data available to it to say, it could be this, or this could be one of these 3 possibilities, and then turns that data back to the doctor. And you see how the doctor's still in charge, right? The AI is very useful, especially if it's any kind of rare disease or a rare presentation of the symptoms, but the doctor is still running the show, right? And so I think it's beyond the emergent stage where these sorts of applications are going mainstream, and we're seeing it in all of the startups here in Japan as well. So if you think about tech trends, that's a thing. And then if I think about process of innovation, something that is probably more mature or possibly more mature in other parts of the world, but is really catching on here in Japan as a process is open innovation, right? Because the old model is you've got your team of, you've got 20 R&D people in your department, and when you're trying to solve a problem, you go back to your desk and you think harder, right? That's the internally focused solution. But in the open innovation world, you say, wow, here's a new problem for us. I bet there's some people somewhere in the world already been thinking about this for the last 5 years, right? And you might find there's a PhD student in Indonesia who's been thinking about nothing else but your problem, right? And so in the open innovation world, you cast a net broadly, and then you find smart people or smart ideas, and you license them, you hire them, you buy a company, whatever, then you bring it inside, and then it becomes yours. But you use open innovation as a process, almost a philosophy of this is how we're going to solve problems. And so I had the honor of being on the first ever Japan Open Innovation Prize earlier this year, including we had the Prime Minister's Open Innovation Prize, where we looked at Japanese companies who are partnering in unusual ways or asking the world to help them with solutions. The Prime Minister's Prize was a program in Aomori Prefecture. Apparently, Aomori historically has had the lowest life expectancy of any of the Japanese prefectures. And so this is a new program that combines knowledge from universities and companies and things like that they are literally trying to move the needle. They're trying to increase the life expectancy of people who live in Aomori using data science, using the knowledge they collect. So as a trend, open innovation is definitely something emerging, and there's lots more opportunities there. And then since I should wrap up, this is a long answer, but let me just touch briefly on the third one, which is the human needs, right? Our business is entirely, we call that process design thinking. It is entirely based on human needs. And so when you're out there in the world, you see these needs, many of which have existed since humanity began, but they still trend as something that gets a lot of attention. And so one of the top ones I am seeing in the US and also somewhat here in Japan is sleep. People are, no pun intended, waking up to the idea that sleep is really, really, really important. And I say this to you, the most sleep-deprived nation on earth. It's not just the hours of sleep, it's the quality of your sleep really matters. And so I've got all these friends wearing these sleep rings. And if you've seen it, there's a number of competitors in the US. I'm not aware of any in Japan that can tell the difference between you lying quietly in your bed and you actually sleeping. And it'll tell you how many hours you slept, how much REM sleep you sleep, and then you can do this sleep experiment on yourself. If I drink less sake between 8 p.m. and midnight, I sleep better. You can find that out. If I eat dinner a little earlier, I sleep a little better. And this sleep stuff really, really matters. Using data science, we did this sleep project. It's called Rise Science. It's a company in the US that altered the sleep patterns of professional athletes. And the great thing about professional athletes is everything is measured. Like if you're 20% less efficient at work tomorrow, no one knows, right? That's the great thing. But professional athletes, they measure them every second. And in Rise Science, we have data. You can go on the IDEO website and see this data. You get those professional athletes a little more sleep, a little better sleep, they are dramatically better. Fewer injuries in the course of a season. They're in more plays of a game. They have a faster start rate. When they start running, they're a little bit faster, right? And so think about, just for yourself, how might I sleep a little more? But as a business opportunity, wow, if you have a mattress, a technology, a sleep aid of any kind, the market is really ripe for that. So that's tech trend, a process trend, and a human need trend that we're seeing in our business. Somebody else?
Yeah, but UB as a kind of IoT device and also sleep solution,
Yes.
they are United States solutions or a Japanese?
So UB is a Japanese
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And it's artificial intelligence at the front end of when a patient comes to a doctor. It helps the doctor. So it's a tool. It's really a decision support tool for doctors here in Japan. The sleep, it's currently confidential, but we have a Japanese client who has a big idea related to sleep that they might create as a standalone company, or they might do inside of their current company. So definitely trends in Japan. But the Rise Science one I described, that one is, because that one's public, but that one's in the US. But no, I think the three things I talked about I'm seeing in the US, but I only mention them because I'm seeing them in Japan as well.
Tom, you covered a lot, so I don't have much room, but I totally agree. Like across the globe, not about just pushing like a machine learning and technology. The open source one thing, everybody goes to GitHub, but the most important piece is set optimization, which comes with actual like a process of value, because it's pushing like machine learning, decision making is not enough. And to get the point, to optimize the result and truly make it truly transformational, it comes with human feedback, constantly changing like variables and the feedback, and that's usually requires a heuristic approach and human interactions. So I see like a trend, going back to your point, not just about the United States. In fact, I was 2 days ago in Perth, in Sydney, because my team is there also and visited. Across the globe, the trend becomes from a proof of concept, and it's more like pushing the machine learning and technology to the point where proof of more like value, right? Realize real business value, and that is a trend. I super generalize, but that's a trend I see across the globe.
In Japan trend. I see many industries, and my recognition about the Japan innovation things, I think all the innovation is happening around the intersection between the fourth industry revolution and the pressure from population decline. So I would say intelligent mobility and AI robotics and health tech for aging society. All the things we can recognize the combination of the fourth industry revolution and pressure from population decline. So I think all the sectors, ordinary corporation sectors like mechatronics industries are looking at how digital technology can change and transform the ordinary businesses to the how they can fit to these two things. Yeah.
If I could just build on that briefly, the population decline is a Japan trend more than American trend, so I didn't mention it. But I was recently, just 2 weeks ago, at Stanford University, and there were governors from 5 Japanese prefectures. And the moderator asked them, what is the #1 challenge you're facing? And the #1 challenge that the governors mentioned was the population decline, and as they put it, loss of our youth to Tokyo. So this is, we don't feel this in Tokyo as much, but it's really palpable when you get out into other places in Japan. And so when we were creating the Prime Minister's first Japan Open Innovation Prize, there was not pressure, but there was a great desire on our part for it not to be a Tokyo-based solution. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not that we threw away the Tokyo ones, but
That's true. Actually, Tokyo population is going to be increasing for another 5 years. So since I think 2055, Tokyo population is going to be decline. So, yeah.
And also, one thing to add, Tom said augmented intelligence instead of artificial intelligence, and that's I really, なんて言うんだろう。I also think about it. So please describe more details because artificial intelligence is it seems like AI and people are following, but augmented intelligence is people are centered and AI are supporting us. So what is the difference and also the comments of each of you? Yeah.
okay, if I start?
Yeah, I exchanged my business card with Kudo-san today, and his actual business card has applied intelligence. So maybe the comparison of augmentation of intelligence and applied intelligence.
I
could
imagine
be-
they may not compete against each other. They may be, but the augmented intelligence, because you know, if you just look at the world as pure data scientists, it might be easy to conclude that, oh, I found the problem. It's humans, right? And there's a famous movie some of you may have seen called Terminator, in which the artificial intelligence figured out exactly that. They created this network called Skynet, and then the next thing Skynet decided to do is get rid of humans on the planet, and it does solve some problems. And so this is a design challenge, right? If we keep this idea of augmented intelligence in mind always when we're creating new systems, then you think about the data, the machine learning in support of human endeavors, you can design it to be that way. If you don't consider that variable when you create a system, there is some danger that the AI will decide it's us. I've seen the problem and it is us. So, just philosophically, that's what, and I can imagine it being compatible with your idea of implied.
Yeah. Those, yeah.
So before you start, I met him 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah. And when he explained the not artificial intelligence, but intelligence in safety in New York. So please explain about what you have done in the past and also augmented intelligence or yeah.
So before I forget, and I want to make a comment. Yes, I do. I'm gonna mention about New York, but yeah, you're right. It's like the hybrids, right? Like one good example. This is a public information, so I can mention about it. The Saga Prefecture, the governor Yamaguchi, and the former governor, the Furukawa-san, right? I was working as an advisor, and one of the icon project is emergency dispatch projects. It's the idea is, long story short, you're constantly changing the supervised society. They have to consolidate like the firehouse, right? And less ambulance and less people, but for example, heart attack, right? If you make a mistake at one call and the hospital cannot accept it, it's create one close to 90 seconds delay, and you gotta go another hospital to call it. So dispatch process is key to make patient live. Otherwise, they're gonna life-threatening situation. So it turned out, right? We embed machine learning, the iPad. They use doctor helicopters and GPS location data, but it requires the number of bed and technicians and specialized doctor. For example, like heart attack case, like EKG or like a cardiologist should be in place. Otherwise, you know, in Japanese hospital, you can decline, right? It's dearly unlikely it's not going to happen in the United States. No matter what, you got to accept the emergency patients. But in Japan, you have right to decline. So that's a problem number one, right? So it's turned out the machine learning itself cannot solve it because the data is so silo, right? The number of bad information usually is critical information because if you deliver the patients and you know the hospital has no capacity to accept it, and then you gotta go another one, right? So that information, it turned out like administrator, hospital administrator, and the nurse, right, enter at the end of a business day, right? So it's not a refresh. So what we did is like you know kind of connecting dot and dot, right? Creating a holistic data supply chain, which is nothing to do with machine learning, right? It's a human approach. So we have to talk to hospital administrators. Your input information is a key to make patient life, you know. So that's a great example, like you mentioned, like machine learning, yeah, maybe can solve the issue, but the behind the scene data lake, data pipeline, you gotta work with actual processes, otherwise it's not gonna happen. So going back to your question now, so New York, New York one is a maybe it's not you know augment applied intelligence, just try to make visible like school principals evaluation process in New York City. I was working for a Chancellor Joel Klein under the like Mayor Bloomberg administration, so who is a very iconic leader for data science. What's with it is objectivity, lack of objectivity, how to evaluate the school principal. Is because the key is it's called the No Child Left Behind Act, which is established by President George Bush, and then inherited by President Obama, and still going on. The idea is nobody left behind. Like you should be college ready, and to do so, the key is leadership, which is principal, school principal. So the question is how to evaluate and make great leader in the school principal. We have 1,600 school principals in New York City. The very difficult task, like objectively assess and then make laddering, right? So we did is, you know, bunch of compliance item, regulatory requirements, because you know, if the kids cannot see, you gotta conduct a vision test, and if you don't, if your kids cannot see well, you gotta suggest corrected, you know, like glasses and the visions, right? So those regulatory requirements, it sounds like not relevant, but it's relevant to their school performance, because if you cannot see the blackboard, what the situation, right? You can see text and the teachers like the guidance. So that's one piece of example where we have like 50, close to 50 or 60, you know, consist of like state test and a regulatory requirement. We quantify it, right? Using numerator, denominator, and quantify it, and objectively assess it. But I think your point is, some folks ask me, is that just machine learning? No, my answer is no. Like the truth is like I cannot say exact number, but some portion is actually agreed upon, like school leaders, district leaders with school principals. So it's not just about 1 or 0, like a cargo, like data competition. It's not like that. We as a human, we agreed upon, you know, more like qualitative, like review process, and combination of those quantifiable KPI plus, you know, qualitative, like interviewing process, and together, like make assessment. So I do believe still that school performance review is in place in New York City. If you are interested in please go ahead to see Google the website. But that's also, hybrid approach to make them understood, and so that's rather than pushing things machine and they reject it. Rather than doing that, we mutually agree upon those approaches and move forward. Because the important thing is, if they, field workers or whatever, like, people who consume machine learning, if they don't agree, that's the end. We waste the money. So design thinking, going back to you guys' specialties, design thinking, how to make them understand with the plain language and actually make it happen is a key. We are not just living on the doing mathematics and machine learning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the design thinking method is the strong platform for the team. Actually, in corporations, the teams are always silo, and the silo is so strong. And then if silo is too strong, it is very hard for them to tackle onto the human-centric problem. So I think data visualization and human-centric, understanding and approach is a very powerful combination for corporation to build a product for the people. How do you think, Tom?
Switch this on. Sure. And I'm glad you mentioned data visualizations, because sometimes it's not really machine learning. You can combine our design thinking approach things with great data visualization. So we really believe in storytelling. We think it's a big opportunity for companies to not just have better technology, but tell better stories about their technology. And so data really helps you tell the story. We were working in a hospital recently, and what we want to do is go interview the patients in the hospital and then put their picture up and talk about, this is what Takeshi said, and this is what happened to him when he came to the hospital, because people have an emotional reaction to that. And we still do that. But combining with our data science friends, it was more data visualization, where they said, let's take all the patients you serve today in the hospital, and we're going to represent them by little balls. And we're like, no, represent humans as little balls. But then they followed the balls through the hospital, and there was tremendous insight, like, oh, look, those people must be in pain. That's awful, from the data visualization. And so it's not either or. We're finding the combination of design thinking with data science in all of its aspects can be really powerful. When we present it that way to companies, they see it in a different light.
So maybe we can slightly change the topic. We as a Japanese government announced design-driven management last year, and I and Kinya were a member of that. So I would like to Kinya to describe about what is a design-driven management is, and also Tom and maybe Kudo-san are
Sure.
for.
Okay. Last year, Japan government, the METI, Keizai Sangyo Sho, and IP Patent Office proposed a design-driven management. It's like a statement and manifesto. And the background recognition about the industry, the government thinks design skill set and a design attitude could contribute to re-energize Japan industry somehow. And I think the problem is how Japan authentic corporate industry can transform into more digitally equipped corporations, and design is the powerful tool to introduce digital technology to the society. So that's a one background story. And this statement says corporate could hire the chief class executive officer in design, who is in charge of design management in corporation. And after that, after this statement, the startup community in Japan moved so fast. And for example, Mercari and BizReach and DNA and Yahoo actually hire the new CDO or CXO. CXO is Chief Experience Officer, who manage the design and marketing communication in one hand. So I think this is one of agenda in Japan society and in Japan industry, how we could use design in higher layer.
Sure. Kudo-san, you want to jump in?
Sure. That's quite important for us at the data science practice. It's a missing part, and the reason is for example, I'm not sure it's appropriate example, but let me cite one good example, right? Earthquake, right? This is sad, but 2011, as you know, we struck by a big earthquake, and close to 19,000 people died. But what's happening is 19% of people died not caused by actual struck the earthquake itself, but aftermath impact, right? So this is really good example. We have sophisticated, alert system. So for example, prediction, right? Is just a prediction. This is example, because even though you get alerts, right? If people don't take actions, it's maybe life-threatening situation, or worst cases die. And that is, we are living in the data science practice. That's earthquake example, but any consumer goods, retail products, and resource industry utilities, you can name communication and media high tech. We're using machine learning, and the prediction is prediction. And I gotta talk to corporate executive. It's not a magic box, right? Once you set prediction points, set optimization point, it's important, right? Prepare the situation at the moment of impact, but at the same time, aftermath, how they react, how to convince them, right? That's the key ingredients becoming. And that, again, this message will resonate well with the first, human hybrid interaction augment intelligence, because it's reality is it's not just about the machine itself in the prediction point, but design. And I always think machine learning is people saying forecasting and the future prediction, but to me, machine learning always using static or dynamic past data, right? It's about the past in my world. And some say, no, loss of function in the deep learning using online machine learning, the feed and mini batch to loss function, so it's technically not past data. Yes, it is, because it's still at the moment of impact, it's going to the past, 1 second, 2 seconds, right? So I feel always it's machine learning as a practice lead in Accenture, feel like our PhD data scientists missing the core part, think ahead about after the moment of our prediction model. So design thinking, I do believe will play the key role, right, to connecting the dot and creating actual optimal point, which makes it truly transformational impacts, right? If that makes sense.
Yes. So I just want to say I was so happy when I heard about this Japanese government initiative on design-led management, because I feel like my relationship with design and the business community of Japan has now come full circle. When I started working with Japanese clients more than 20 years ago, I had this lovely client. He was a great executive at NEC. His name was Sakakibara-san. And we liked him a lot, but one night over drinks, Sakakibara-san says to me, Tom, be honest now. He says this design stuff you do, this design thinking you do, he says, it's kind of the optional fun in the business world, isn't it? You know, and so he was hiring us. We were working together, but he still thought of it as optional fun, right? And to go from optional fun to like a government initiative saying this is really important, listen up, let's do design-driven management. Wow, that is, you know, we are 180 degrees from where I started. Right? And so for those of you, and many of you work at companies who've already adopted design thinking, and I just want to make sure you understand, design thinking is not one of those things that's like yes or no, like you check the box. Yep, we have design thinking now, right? It's a little more like chess. You know, I learned to play chess in the 4th grade. Chess is really easy, actually. You know, the rules. I can learn the rules in 10 minutes. The rook always moves this way. You know, the bishop at an angle. The queen moves wherever she wants, right? The rules of chess are really easy. You can intellectually understand the concept of the game. You can even play a game after 10 minutes of figuring out the rules. But you can get better, right? And it gets more rewarding and more fun the better you get at it. And so even if your team, even if your company is doing design thinking, I just want to emphasize, you're not done, right? It's like human relationships. Just because you got to the wedding together doesn't mean you're done. You know, I've been married to my wife, who's from Hokkaido. Been married to my wife 32 years, and you know, it's a learning journey all the way. And so I just want to make sure you understand that about design thinking. Like the fact that you went to a workshop on design thinking last week is really good, and you're not done. Think of it as something that there is rewards to be gained by getting better and better.
Yeah, so now we understand the innovation and also how design can contribute, but at the same time, then we won't know what we can do from now. So maybe, and also maybe 5 minutes left. So immediate action that we can start. That's I want to speak about.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah.
So the immediate action, as a science perspective, I observe everywhere in the, 40 countries. Maybe we should set up a structured approach, which means like it always comes with like a machine learning, design thinking, always comes with some sort of politics in between like organization, right? And one division leader do this thing, and another one do the different thing. The KPI not well like coordinate. So one piece. This is actually had a discussion with KDDI's Chief Executive Officer Takahashi-san last month, and about the design thinking. Like he said, maybe like we should think about like Mario Kart, right? Nintendo's. So it's a quality assurance and user perspective. Well, we cannot approve what we can approve. That is design thinking view, and rather than rely on each divisions do the KDDI's work, right? Maybe that's one thing. That's really great point. Maybe structured approach. I cannot say the detail because it's confidential, but that's one really great conversation with Takahashi-san. The second piece is more technical. This is data science. So maybe some of you may not hear about this, but we data scientists, like cargo, right? You can Google cargo, right? The mission is not just about creating 1 or 0 constructed forecasted value, right? Which is called like a true positive, false negative, right? False negative, false positive, so on and so forth. What this does is, our forecasting model, for example, credit card transaction is really great example. You can immediately start to think of. We do neural network, right? Focus something. This card transaction is fraudulent activities, right? It's called a true positive. But there is no way to get 100% accuracy, recall, precision for true positive, and costly, exponentially costly in terms of data science. You don't want to put the PhD just getting 99.9% accuracy, right? There's no way. So what this does then, like design thinking, so how to stop transaction because mathematics is not perfect. There is a 1% missing transaction, right? If you have 30 million subscribers or credit card owners, right? And they just 1% massive amount, probably 300,000, if I calculate correctly, right? It's massive, and it bleeding the loss. So we have to do actual design thinking, call center, how to stop, all those also transaction. If you get the checks, if you get some expensive stuff, sometime, I don't know, Louis Vuitton or like a luxury goods store owner stop your transaction and ask your identity and over the code. That is operation. That is what they do is stop those false negative, minimize the risk, right? That is design thinking. So my second suggestion is we can immediately act in terms of data science community and the science perspective, treat how to design the process value from how to treat, minimize the false negative. That's another piece. So I stop here.
Okay,
Sure.
To build the better product and the better services, I think the silo system is the one of the biggest problem. Silo system, yeah. So I think it is very hard for corporation to introduce design capability from from scratch. So maybe more pragmatic approach for corporation to train engineers and scientists and business person as a designer. So in the UK, in the RCA, we trained over 1,000 engineers and business people as a designer. Not as a designer, but they learn about the design skill set. And I think the major weapon for the non-designer's designer, I think the skill set for observation and prototyping, and then these two tools is very powerful for engineers and designers. So I would say, for example, even if for data scientists, design thinking is learnable and very powerful at the same time. And if the connectivity in between tech and design, or business and design, if the connectivity is get stronger, I think that the performance it gets stronger. So my proposal is, why not? Maybe for example, we looking at the Japan authentic universities. Actually, in engineering school and design school, there's no design division and a design department. So we could build the tangible design, learning center in universities and set that similar functionality in corporations.
So if I could just answer briefly, I'm not good at that, but I'll try. There is data. There's kind of a lot of data saying that Japan is the most creative country on earth. And there's some data that says Tokyo is the most creative city on earth. And so what can you do with specific action? One, you can believe it, because the data that says it's the most creative place on earth isn't from Japan. Japanese people don't believe it's the most creative place on earth, but the rest of the world does. So you as a leader here in Japan, step one is believe it. Just look it up, there's data. And as soon as you believe that, then that starts changing your behavior. Like, I work at a company, maybe I work at a big company in the most creative nation on earth. And that, guess what? All that creativity is not just inside the head of the shacho, right? That is spread across the brains of the whole company, including the people at the bottom of the organization who spend time with customers and clients every day. They see stuff that the shacho never gets a chance to see in his or her office on the top floor of the building. Right? So if I'm a leader, whether I'm shacho or anywhere in the organization, and I believe I work in one of the most creative places on earth, now I want to tap into that creativity. You don't have to give anyone creativity, they already got it. You gotta access it, you gotta unlock it. So 1 week into every new employee, start asking them questions like, hey, you're new here. What'd you see this week that surprised you, right? And the senior people, start asking them like, what aren't we doing that we should be doing? And you can, if you really want to go big, you can set up an open innovation program inside your company, as many companies have, and said, we want the best ideas from all over the company, right? So first believe that you have this creativity everywhere, and then tap into it systematically. Tap into it, not just once a year at the offsite. Try to tap into that creativity in a way that adds value to your company every day.
Thank you. Okay, so I have more questions to ask you, but let's take a Q&A. So please raise your hands.
I have a question to Thompson. Now is a very good discussion the combination of the design and the new technology to more make performance. So the former part of the discussion, the Thompson mentioned about the sleep, right? Maybe not sleep to make a daytime performance, I believe it. But that is normal, healthy people. But I want to point out that for the psychiatric disease patient, there's a lot of patients here in Japan and all globally. But how to this kind of combination assess for the this kind of disease patients?
Yeah.
This is my question.
Okay.
And then,
I'm seeing some issues in confidentiality or data confidentiality, management of data confidentiality or privacy, and what do you think about it?
Alan Miner from Sunbridge. When I hear that IBM has hired a chief design officer and the Japanese government is excited about design management, that is the indication to me that the trend of design thinking itself has reached maturity and is perhaps on the mature downtrend coming forward. However, as one of the creators of this practice and promotion of this practice, I'm really curious what you see, Tom, as the next wave of the application of design thinking. It has always been about industrial design, product design, and there are issues that I think the category hasn't spent much time addressing on the spiritual aspects of life, the community aspects of life, how as human beings we engage with one another and with society. And I'm curious what you're seeing emerging in the application of design thinking to social design and interhuman relationship design and education and those kinds of areas, if anything.
Good.
maybe one question by Tom, and then.
I think I can take the security layer,
and then
I can't. No.
So we're going to take them in order that they were asked? Oh, first question. So the pharma question. Yes, this sleep turns out to be useful for everyone. One of the things we're looking at is sleep for small babies. Sleep for the mothers of small babies. It turns out to be really important to the whole family. And so this question about people specific in disease states, and our approach to change in an organization is just like our approach to the tackling big problems like sleep for people in disease states, which is take this big scary change and break it down into little doable bite-sized chunks. And so we did some recent work on young adults with schizophrenia. And we created an app working very closely with a respected healthcare institution in America called UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. And kids with schizophrenia and depression, and said, okay, that's, you can't conquer depression like all in one gulp. Maybe you could do this. And we have these daily tasks. Call someone you know and ask them how they're doing, right? And we get these young adults doing the daily tasks. And then there's data on this that more than 80% of these young adults with depression, at the end of doing these daily tasks over and over again, said they had a reduction in symptoms. And they were talking about symptoms of like feelings of loneliness or sadness. Well, if you have depression, and you lose the feelings of loneliness or sadness, it's hard to say whether you're depressed anymore, right? And so I would say the same with sleep is set up the conditions that enable you to sleep. Try one thing at a time. Play certain music. So any parents in the room? I'm guessing a lot, right? When my kids were born, we did this thing, which is we selected a piece of instrumental music, and we only ever played it in one context. When it is time to go to bed, you play that music. And there's this idea called Pavlovian, you know, with the dogs and the stuff. And we played that every night of their entire childhood. And my kids are 25 and 27, and I bet if I played that music right now, they would like knock off to sleep in 2 minutes, right? And so as one step of many, as an experiment, I would start with, what are the conditions of the room? What is the sound characteristics? What are the conditions for sleep? And then I would experiment with them. And then I would experiment with many other things, like what do I drink? What do I say? How many hours do I stay away from a screen before I try to sleep? And so big change with many, many small experiments, some of which will fail. It's like, no, that music thing didn't work for me. And then you try another and another and another. And so that's how I would approach it.
So the second one, the ladies, and so I think I super generalized. I'm gonna respond back in 2 minutes. So technically, maybe twofold, right? One is a legal advisor. I think majority of corporate data science practice doesn't have close collaboration. We have internal, right? Majority of clients have internal audit, right, which like location data cannot be utilized for the marketing purpose and so on and so forth. But that is a strict regulation piece. Usually we don't have in the data science practice that doesn't collaborate with legal advisor. I think now on, I think it's a strongly recommend that it's costly, but we cannot underplay because if something happen, it's bigger cost coming, right? So that one technical piece. Two, rather than on-prem, right? It's a cloud architecture much more compelling. Now it becomes, right, Azure, like AWS, like NGC, or like, I forgot, GCP, and like Google. Because majority of them comply, each API comply with the specific regulatory requirements, right? So that's good. Third piece, this is more human, like it's a consumer or like field workers, that's a perception gap. Even though we meet regulatory requirements, the majority of consumer is not ready. It's that I see the variance between country and country. So we gotta be careful in terms of permission, even though they said, I get a permission, consumer is not aware of it or like not ready to. So giving like a great benefit, like Disney, Florida's Magic Band, that's Accenture's product, right? Getting bunch of consumer information, but they accept it because, accept giving us the information because we give more benefit, right? Once you lost kids in the park, we can identify for you. So anyway, so that's 3 short description, and I'm gonna keep the.
Oh, okay, sorry, sure. So yes, or less. So yeah, the question for those who didn't recall this, taking 3 questions once, sometimes you forget the question, but it was about design thinking being mature, and this goes back to what I said earlier about it's chess. You know, is chess mature? It's been around for 1,000 years. We're still playing a lot of chess, but and so it is true that in many places in the world, design thinking has been widely adopted, which is great. I'm very happy about that. Some people are doing it badly. I'm unhappy about that. But I think that the future of design thinking is the combination of design thinking with other disciplines. So when I started, you know, Alan described the idea of the past in which we focused mainly on products. We are very, very diverse now. we tried to have the best engineers in the world. That was we were a pure play engineering group with a kind of humanistic bent. But our business got so much more interesting and so much more impactful when we combined engineering with design and anthropology and things like that. And so now, having practiced design thinking for a long time, we're trying to combine it with other disciplines in an interesting way. So I personally am really interested in behavioral economics, right, the social science of behavior change. And so we have an association now with Dan Ariely at BE Works in Canada, and we're finding a lot of overlap in our interest. And I mentioned data science a few times. We bought a data science company. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunities for application. There's, from many, many years ago, there's a famous US designer named Charles Eames, and he was interviewed by this lovely French woman. I say that for her accent. She doesn't appear on camera, but she's this lovely French accent. She says, Mr. Eames, what is the limit of design? And his answer was, what is the limit of problem, right? And so I think we've got a lot of things yet to work on. And Alan Miner specifically mentioned social issues. We're working on social issues around the world. He specifically mentioned education. We created a new education system for the nation of Peru. It's called Innova School. And our Peruvian kids have triple the test scores of kids in other schools, right? But we use design thinking to design the physical schools, to design the curriculum, to design the business model for the schools, right? And so we're very interested in social innovation, and we're currently working on, through our open innovation platform, Open Idea, we're currently working on trying to redesign the coffee cup. It turns out those coffee cups you get in a place like Starbucks, they're not exactly recyclable, and they're not exactly compostable. And that's a problem in the world because there's billions of these, of course, right? And so we're using Open IDEO as a way to basically reinvent with the cooperation of companies like Starbucks and McDonald's, because the impact on the earth of those cups is non-trivial, and we want to fix that. And so that's using design thinking, applying it to social innovation.
Yeah. So this is the end, but innovation by technology was so long. So we used to be that, but I feel the innovation by design and data science, or maybe innovation by culture, is coming. So let's keep this conversation going on. Thank you.